I sit alone in my house, surrounded by dark walls that seem to breathe with an eerie atmosphere. Every creak, every sound makes my nerves tense to the breaking point. I try to convince myself that it's just my imagination, but the shadow of uncertainty relentlessly follows me. It all started a few weeks ago. I discovered strange sounds in the darkness of the night, a scraping noise, like footsteps, but seemingly from a distance. At first, I simply attributed it to neighbors or passersby, but over time the sounds became more convincing. They seemed to infiltrate every corner of my house, pursuing me even into the farthest recesses of my mind. Tonight, this undefined sense of dread reached its peak. I turned on the lights in every room, but even the bright light couldn't dispel my fears. I heard the crystalline sound of glass shattering somewhere in the house. My heart froze in my chest, and cold sweat covered my skin. Deciding that I could no longer tolerate this uncertainty, I resolved to investigate the source of this horrifying atmosphere. With trepidation in my heart, I set out in search, stepping through each room, expecting something terrible. Suddenly, I heard a muffled sound coming from the basement. My legs grew weak as I descended the stairs. The air grew thicker, filling my lungs with a sense of dread. When I finally reached the basement, I saw a dark silhouette standing in the shadows. My breath caught in my throat, and I almost screamed in terror. But as I looked closer, I saw the face of my own reflection in the mirror hanging on the wall. With a relieved sigh, I dared to smile at myself in the mirror. But then I noticed something strange. The shadow standing behind me had no reflection. I slowly turned around and my heart stopped. Before me stood a silhouette whose features I couldn't discern in the darkness. I tried to scream, but the sound stuck in my throat. The shadow began to approach me slowly, as if engulfing me in its abyss. And now, as my story comes to an end, I leave it open. My story is just beginning, and I don't know what happened next. What shadow is pursuing me? And can I avoid my fate or become its victim? It all remains a mystery to be unraveled. My heart is beating so hard that it feels like it might leap out of my chest. The shadow draws nearer, and I feel fear washing over me in waves. But suddenly something stops me. I remember the hastily abandoned box in the corner of the basement. With focused attention, I approached the box and opened it. Inside were old photographs, tattered letters, and pieces of broken objects. Amidst this chaos, I noticed a diary, my diary. With trembling hands, I opened it and began to read the entries, which seemed so distant and foreign. But as I delved into the past, the pieces of what had happened began to fit together in my mind. The shadow standing before me was an embodiment of my past pain, fears, and doubts. It was my past that I had tried to forget, but that continued to haunt me even in the darkest corners of my mind. Realizing this freed me from the shackles of fear. I understood that the shadow could not harm me unless I allowed it to. It was merely a part of me that I needed to accept and endure. With a deep breath, I set the diary aside and turned to the shadow, which still stood before me. In that moment, it seemed less menacing, more a reflection of my own essence. "I am no longer afraid of you," I whispered, feeling strength returning to me. "You are a part of me, and I will embrace you." The shadow began to slowly fade away, dissipating into the air, and suddenly the entire basement was bathed in light. I was left alone amidst the scattered belongings, but now I felt liberated from the weight of the past. My story may continue, but now I know that regardless of what the future holds, I am ready to face it head-on, accepting all its challenges and trials.